University.
Good morning. We are back in session. Trustee Taylor, will you reconvene the Committee on Finance for the final item?
I will reconvene the Committee on Finance. For item number 5, members, this is an action item requesting approval of a new master investment policy for the Cal State University system. Item will be presented by CFO Steve Relier and Assistant Vice Chancellor for Financing, Treasury, and Risk Management, Mr. Eaton. Steve, please begin.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Our effort to expand the CSU's investment authority was signed into law by the governor this last September and became effective in January of this year. The new authority is a critical tool in addressing our capital needs, since increased earnings on investments from this authority will be dedicated to one-time capital funding. As part of the implementation of this new investment authority, the board established an investment advisory committee at its September meeting of this year. The next key step in the implementation process is a new master investment policy for the CSU, which we are presenting today for your approval. This new policy establishes a framework for the investment of CSU funds consistent with the goals of the board and the educational mission of the university. Before I turn this over to Robert Eaton, I would like to thank Trustee Taylor for his hard work, really, and great guidance in helping us get to this point in this process. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Vice Chancellor Robert Eaton.
Thank you, Executive Vice Chancellor Relier. Let me begin by providing the board with an overview of the key components of the new investment authority. First, the legislation expands the types of investments that the CSU can make, the most notable of which is the ability to invest in equity mutual funds and real estate investment trusts. Secondly, in order to move at a measured, conservative pace and provide ample opportunity to monitor the CSU's use of the new investment authority, the legislation stipulates that the amount of funds that can be placed in the new investment options be phased in over a couple of years and then capped at 30% of eligible investments thereafter. In order to take advantage of the new authority, the legislation requires the board to establish an investment advisory committee, and as Executive Vice Chancellor Relier has noted, the Board of Trustees took that action and established the committee at its September meeting. Reporting will be enhanced with quarterly reports to the board and annual reports to the legislature. And the legislation codifies certain items that are already included in the annual investment report to the board, such as investment returns, comparisons to benchmark portfolio holdings and market values, and then adds new reporting requirements such as investment management fees. And then finally, because of the importance of the legislation in meeting our capital needs and to insulate CSU operations from investment volatility, earnings from the new investments are to be used for deferred maintenance and critical infrastructure only. In light of the new investment authority and related investment goals of the California State University, the existing California State University investment policy needs to be updated and enhanced. Staff has developed a draft of a new master investment policy for the CSU, which is included in the agenda item as attachment B. The master investment policy is designed to provide a framework for the investment of CSU funds and includes the following key elements. First, the articulation of standards and expectations to be met by parties involved in the investment of CSU funds, such as compliance with law, adherence to policy, application of the prudent investor rule, acknowledgement of investment risk and the potential loss of value, refraining from conflicts of interest, and the consideration of environmental, social, and governance factors in making investment decisions. Secondly, the master investment policy outlines the roles and responsibilities of the Board of Trustees, the Chancellor's staff, and the Investment Advisory Committee as fiduciaries for the investment of CSU funds, including delegations of authority from the Board of Trustees to the Chancellor and his staff and to the Investment Advisory Committee to implement the provisions of the master investment policy. Third, investment objectives that shall govern CSU investments, safety of principal, liquidity needs of the CSU, and returns commensurate with acceptable levels of risk. And then finally, the master investment policy provides direction to the Chancellor, to staff, and to the Investment Advisory Committee to establish 3 investment portfolios within acceptable allocation ranges and targets set by the board, each with their own investment objective and policies. Those 3 portfolios are as follows, and the general purpose of each portfolio are as follows. First is a liquidity portfolio. The purpose of this portfolio will be to provide sufficient and immediate liquidity to meet the operating needs of the California State University. The existing California State University System-Wide Investment Fund Trust, or SWIFT portfolio, shall serve as the liquidity portfolio. Secondly, the Master Investment Policy calls for the creation of an intermediate duration portfolio. The purpose of this new portfolio will be to provide opportunity for modest additional risk-adjusted returns on CSU funds not needed for immediate liquidity. And third, the Master Investment Policy calls for the creation of a total return portfolio. The purpose of this portfolio will be to provide opportunity for additional risk-adjusted returns on CSU funds over a full market cycle. The total return portfolio will be the portfolio of investments that takes advantage of the new investment authority. Chair Taylor, that concludes the presentation, and we're happy to, staff recommends approval of the new investment policy as presented in the item attachment B, and we'd be happy to address any questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Robert. Committee members, open for questions at this time. Hopefully folks have had a chance to read it, and it's pretty straightforward. Trustee Carney.
Sorry, I can't reach this. When will this be implemented? When will the advisory committee meet? When will this get going?
The Investment Advisory Committee has already met kind of informally to look at some documents. As we noted, it was established in September. Its first meeting will be in January. It will, with the ratification of this Master Investment Policy, will now have delegated authority to implement such things as a charter for the management of that committee, the rules that will govern it, as well as an individual portfolio policy for the total return portfolio. So they will put that together. We're currently in the process of engaging an investment advisor who will help the committee put that together. So the goal is to complete that work at the January meeting, if possible, and then begin moving money into the new portfolio. We want to work on a quarter end, quarter beginning basis, so we're targeting April 1st to start moving money into the new portfolio.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, or concerns? Trustee Nyland?
I was move the action item.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any additional discussion from members of the committee? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstain? Very well. The motion to approve the new Master Investment Policy for CSU is carried. Madam Chair, that completes the business of the Committee on Finance.
Thank you, Trustee Taylor.